So, we're holding on the very bottom of Mem Gimel Amid Beis. We're in Siman Taf Nun Aleph, and we're finishing up Sif Chav Beis. So, the Ramah over here just finished talking about, we'll just read the words of the Ramah on the bottom line. V'taner shel beis ha'chayrif dinai kikli cheres. He was speaking about this oven in the winter apartment that's used to warm up the room. V'aser, shh, Rabbi say, Shah, hello? You're standing right by a door with his ashir. V'aser lasam shum davar al hataner b'Pesach. You're not allowed to put anything on top of the tanner. So you have this tanner, this furnace that's heated up and it's being used to heat the home. And they used to put things on the exterior of this tanner. And they would put bread during the year. They would put bread or pastida, chametz items on the surface of this oven. So he's telling you on Pesach you can't put anything there. And he brings this down from the Marivail. And we discussed yesterday in Kof Lamed Hey that you can't get the blias out of the exterior surface of this tanner because the hesek of the tanner, the flame, is on the inside. And it's not going to burn out the blias that are on the outside. So on Pesach, you can't put anything there. Incidentally, I think somebody brought up our ovens and the fact that the flame in our oven is on the outside. Somebody brought that up yesterday, right? I think somebody asked that yesterday. Yeah, I asked. It seems to me, just so far from what I've been seeing, that on self-clean ovens, which we use to kasher, we do kasher self-clean ovens on Pesach. What I've been seeing is that there are two flames. There's a flame outside the oven, underneath the floor of the oven, and that's the flame that's generally used for baking. And then there's another flame inside the oven cavity, on the roof of the oven cavity. That's the flame that's generally used for broiling. But when we put the oven on a self-clean setting, you're actually using both flames. And you have a flame on the inside of the oven cavity. So it seems that's why we don't have this problem. We don't have the problem that the hesek is mibachutz, that the fire is on the outside, and the chametz dikablias are coming from the inside. That's what I'm seeing so far. Welcome. Okay.
The only question on that is a lot of times in some of the modern ovens is that those elements are then being blocked by something. So it's not like
what a shield, a heat shield. Yeah. So you have to look at each particular thing. I would have to see how it works exactly. Does the flame come beyond the shield or not, or how does it work? Okay, so now we go to Kuf Lamed Vav. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is the bottom Mishnah Berurah, and Gimel Lamed Beis, is cut in Kuf Lamed Vav. The Ramah had said, Lasam shum davar al hataner. You're not allowed to place anything, any Pesach dika foods, on the exterior surface of this furnace on Pesach. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu kishahatanor cham. This is a problem when the oven is hot. If the surface of the oven is hot, and now you're going to put Pesach dika foods on it, you're going to have a blia problem. Aser af im hamatzah tzainin. This would be aser even if the matzah, let's say you're dealing with matzah, actual matzah. So you have a room temperature matzah, but you put it down on the exterior surface of the oven, and that's hot. So what's going to happen is the matzah is going to be baleah from the surface of the oven. V'chein lahepech, you would have the same problem in the reverse. Kisha hamatzah chama. Let's say you take a hot matzah and you put a hot matzah down on the exterior surface of this oven. Af im hataner tzainin. Even if the surface of the oven is cold, it doesn't matter. The heat of the matzah is going to be maflit. It's going to draw the chametz dikablias out of the surface of the oven into the matzah. Ubishneim tzaininin. Let's say the matzah is cold. I always say cold. It doesn't necessarily mean cold. It's not hot. It's room temperature. Let's say the matzah is not hot and the oven is not hot. So, your first glance over here would be, okay, no problem. Says the Chavetz Chaim, depends. Ubishtem tzaininin, if they're both not hot, bederach keva oser. To do this in a permanent fashion, to do this in a constant fashion, that you're not allowed to do, because that's what we saw already earlier in Sif Aleph. I'll remind you, the lashon of the Ramah was kol kli atzarich libun oy hagala. Anytime you have a vessel that needs to be kashered, either with libun or hagala. Also, hishtamish by afilu tzainin b'loy hechsher. Even cold, you're not allowed to use it without kashering it. That's a gzeira. Now the Chavetz Chaim over there brought down that that's only true b'derech kva. You can't use it in a constant fashion. But b'derech harai, says the Chavetz Chaim here also, b'derech harai ein iser. It wouldn't be iser b'derech harai. So you came into the room and you were holding a matzah, and you needed, you're juggling a lot of things in your hands, and you need someplace to put the matzah down for a minute, and punked, you have the cold oven over here, so fine, you could put it down b'derech harai, and we're not going to aser anything. Im kibeid v'nika gabe ataner shalai nimtza sham chametz be'en. As long as you did a good job of cleaning the surface of that oven to make sure that there's no chametz stikka be'en. If you would have chametz stikka be'en, crumbs of chametz, or stickiness of chametz or something, then certainly you would have a problem. But if you cleaned it, you don't have a problem. B'derech harai. U'kamoishe mavur la'el b'seif Seif Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah Seif Kat Tezayin. Okay. Oleinian di'evet. Let's say now, let's deal with b'di'evets. Let's say you had this furnace was fired up and the exterior is hot, and either the oven was hot and the matzah was hot, or one of them was hot. So now you have a blia problem. The matzah is going to be balei tam chametz from the exterior surface of the oven. What's the halacha? Oiser tachtoni ois hamatzah kidei klipa. So the matzah is going to be balei tam chametz kidei klipa. Kidei klipa is a tiny amount, but like the Mishnah Berurah said really before, on our matzahs, kidei klipa, practically speaking, is going to aser the matzah. Because what are you going to do? You can't take off a klipa of the matzah. So even b'di'eved, with our matzahs, you would have a problem. If you have a nice, good, thick Sephardi matzah, I guess technically you could take off a klipa and you could save something. This is all true if you took the matzah and you put it down directly on the surface of the oven without anything intervening between the matzah and the surface. Let's say you had a pot and you had a soup. You had your Pesach chicken soup. And now you take the pot and you put the pot down on the surface of the oven. Then, afilu im shneihem chamim, even if the pot is hot and the oven is hot, ein oiser b'di'eved. B'di'eved, we're not going to aser anything. Now, this is something, by the way, that you could have, and I'm sure if I think into it, I'll think even of more practical applications. But a very typical, I think, practical application in our homes might be you're taking a hot Pesach pot off of the oven, and maybe it's before Pesach. Maybe you're doing some Pesach preparations a day or two before. You already turned over the kitchen. And now you have a countertop where you typically put chametz down on this countertop, and somehow this piece of the countertop didn't get covered, or the cover fell off, and now you take the pot and you put the pot down on the countertop. And then your wife comes into the kitchen and gets the rolling pin and comes chasing you, because what are you doing? You put my Pesach pot down on my chametz counter. So now, let's take a look. Let's take a step back and let's think about it. If everything is dry, if the countertop is dry and the pot is dry, so we know already the rule that one keli is not balea, it doesn't absorb tam from another keli, even if both kelim are hot. If they're dry, if the exterior of both are dry, there's no blias. We need roitiv. We need some kind of moisture to act as a transfer agent to move those blias. So therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, if you had a pot with a stew in it, even if the pot is hot and the exterior surface of the oven is hot, but the oven we're not going to answer anything. Because the blias that are absorbed in the surface of the oven are not going to leave the oven and go into the pot. Because there's no roitiv. However, However, Chavetz Chaim does point out you cannot do this lechatchila. The reason you can't do this lechatchila, if you look in Yardea in Tzadik Beis, this is where the Ramah says the rule in Yardea that one pot is not balea from another pot, even if they're both hot, if they're both dry. But he says over there, lechatchila, you can't do it. Now, the Ramah doesn't say why you can't do it lechatchila. It comes out from a tshuva in the Igros Moshe from the Rishiva Zatzal. The Rishiva Zatzal says that the reason you can't do it is because of a chash, where it's like a gzera. We're afraid that you have two hot pots over here, and you're relying on the fact that the exterior of both pots are dry. And what happens if you shake the pot a little bit and a little soup goes over? If a little soup goes over, now already it's not dry. Now you're going to have blias going back and forth. So the Rishiva Zatzal seems to take on that that's the tam. Okay. Now, let's say you put something down on the exterior surface of the oven, so it's between the oven and whatever food you're putting onto the surface. So you take a blech, and you put a blech down on the exterior surface of this oven. And now you put the pot on top of the blech. Ukahai gavno, some other substance, bitaktov, underneath the pot. Or you smear some kind of plaster on the exterior surface on the oven with a thickness of an etzba, a finger's thickness. So you have a decent layer of some kind of plaster there. Then then you can do whatever you want on top of this oven, because we're going to say there's no blias anymore. The blias are not going to go through from the let's say you did a blech. So you put a blech on top of the surface of the oven. Okay, the surface of the oven is dry, the blech is dry. No blias go from the surface of the oven to the blech. Now with a pot, we would say that that's not lechatchila, but it's not a pot, it's a blech. Now you're putting a pot on top of that. Even if some soup would spill out from the pot, so now you would have moisture between the pot and the blech. But you don't have anything between the blech and the oven, so there's no transfer of blias over here. So then lechatchila, you have no problem.
Is that maybe the best way to go, instead of people trying to tinfoil up their whole stove?
Well, tin. What do you mean?
Just putting a giant piece of metal over the stove.
Yeah.
Over the stove top.
Yeah. Well, people don't want to spend their whole Yom Tov only cooking on a blech.
The transfer of heat.
I mean, yeah, it might not be the easiest way to fry an omelet, but it would work. Yeah. It would work. V'chol elu hadinim shayich gam b'kachlin ha'asuyim b'tanurim min hatzad. Now, all of these halachas that we just mentioned would also apply to these little compartments that we spoke about yesterday that are in the interior of the oven. So in the interior of the oven, if you have this little compartment, and now you want to put something inside this compartment, so the same halachas that we just saw would be true. If you take a matzah, and you put a matzah down on the interior of this compartment, so if the interior of the compartment is hot, or the matzah is hot, you're going to have a problem. If everything is cold, so you could do it b'derech harai, but you cannot do it b'derech kva. If you want to put a pot inside this compartment, so if you put down something to be mafsik between the pot and the floor of the compartment, you can get away with it. But now he's going to say that there's a chiluk. V'chalelu adinu shayich gam b'kachlin ha'asuyim tanur min hatzad, ela. The sham ein moyel hefsik barzel oitiach tit lamato levad. Inside this little compartment in the oven, it's not enough to put a blech down on the floor or to smear plaster on the floor. You also have to protect the pot from the sides and from the top of the compartment. And the reason it seems is, and again, this is a little tricky because we're coming from a point of some ignorance. At least I don't know exactly what the mitzias of these kachlin are.
It has nothing to do with tumatara.
No, tumatara. No. So what don't you understand?
I don't understand why the outside of the pot is so critical.
What do you mean?
In terms of that it has some moisture on the side of it.
Blias. If you have moisture on the outside of the pot,
right,
and now it touches something else, so you have a Pesach pot. You have moisture on the outside of the Pesach pot, and it touches a hot chametz surface.
It's not external moisture. Where's it coming from? Is it a condensation or not?
It could be external moisture. Let it be external moisture. Any kind. Doesn't matter. Right? So now, over here you have to protect the pot from the side walls of this little compartment in the oven and from the top. I see it underlined here, Kofayit Tes. Yeah. He says over here, Kofayit Tes in the Shari Tzion, Chek Yaakov V'Shari Achroinim, Mishum Azeil Shel Chametz, She'olo L'maylo Mehevel Akterois, because you're going to put a pot inside this compartment in the oven, right? Whatever's in the pot is getting hot, condensation comes up, it hits the roof of this little compartment, and then it drips back down. Now you're going to have a real bona fide problem. If the surface of that little compartment is a chametz sticker surface, so it's going to be balea from the chametz sticker surface, and it's going to fall back down in the pot. So you have to do something to be mafsik. You have to put a blech, a piece of sheet metal somehow, on the top of this little compartment, so that you don't have a problem over there.
Sheet metal's not going to do it unless it has a lip on it.
What do you mean?
If it's flat and it has room to escape, you're still going to have the same problem.
What do you mean if it has room to escape?
In other words, if the pot is not sealed.
No, what you're doing is you're lining the compartment. You have a little compartment inside the oven.
Right.
You're sliding a pot in there.
Oh, you're saying in the compartment?
In the compartment. That's what we're dealing with. And it seems from the Magen Avram, there's a very lengthy Magen Avram over here. It seems from the Magen Avram, and I have to say, I read this Magen Avram, it's a long Magen Avram, and it's not a simple Magen Avram. I read the Magen Avram through quickly this morning. It seems that what they're concerned with in this compartment, the same concern that they have with the top of the compartment, where we're concerned about the zayah, about the condensation coming out of the pot, that's also the concern of the side walls, because we're afraid that everything is going to get wet and damp inside this compartment, and now anything that touches, you're going to have a problem. So you have to protect the floor, you have to protect the side walls, you have to protect the top, you have to protect the whole compartment. Achein, tiach shalamala, einoi ma'akiv b'di'evid. But says the Chavetz Chaim, and again he's coming from that Magen Avram, where the Magen Avram says that the least problem is the top of the compartment. The sides of the compartment and the floor of the compartment are a bigger problem. The roof of the compartment, the Magen Avram says, is not such a problem. Why? Because again, we're restricted by our knowledge of the Metzias, but the Magen Avram says that generally speaking, there was enough room between the top of the pot and the roof of the compartment, whereby once the zayah came up, it was already cooled to the extent where it's not going to be balea from the roof of the compartment. Now, interestingly enough, this is a concept that comes up very often when people are redoing their kitchens. People do work in their kitchens, and they want to put a microwave over the range, right? You have these microwaves that go over the range, and they also act as a hood for the range. Sometimes they don't have a lot of height, so they drop down the microwave and the hood pretty low. Now, if you drop it down low, and then you also cook with a large pot, I know I have an 18-quart stock pot that I use sometimes. So if you slide a big pot in there, so you could have a problem, which I'll say it's not that common. But you could have a problem where if you fill the pot up all the way and you cook, let's say, fleischiks, let's say you have one stovetop in your kitchen. So you use that stovetop for milchiks and fleischiks. Oh, so now let's say you made something milchiks and you had hot zayah, hot condensation went up from the pot and hit the underside of that hood. And it was yad seledes. It was hot when it hit there. Now you take off the pot, now you put in another pot, and now you cook fleischiks. You could have a deraisa problem of basar v'cholov, where you're actually cooking basar v'cholov on the underside of the range hood, and also the basar v'cholov could be dripping back down in your pot. Now, it's not common, because the kitchens that I've gone to see this, if you fill up the pot, you boil up the pot, and you put your hand over the pot, you really don't need a lot of height between already where it doesn't get, where it's not yad seledes. But it is something that people have to pay attention to. It's something that it's just people don't even, it doesn't even strike them. It's something that people overlook completely.
So how is it that when it comes to the water coolers, they have the hot and the cold, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that you can use it both for hot and cold, even though you may have goyim using it also, and they're not concerned about the heat that rises from.
So, in other words, let's say a guy is using the water cooler to fill up a hot bowl of something treif.
Right.
You have to see the Metzias. I don't know what the Metzias is. You have to see, is there a problem? Is there...
I think specifically in that case they say it's okay. In the case that we're talking now in the kitchen,
right,
it's a different issue altogether.
I mean, I definitely could see a problem there. I definitely could see a problem.
The issue came up, I think it was written up one of the night.
This is a big problem that people also, it's not on their radar screen, especially people who work in offices and where they have these kitchenettes and using the microwaves and using the microwaves and using the hot water things. And you have to pay attention to the shilas and see how people use things.
They have separate microwaves for non-kosher also.
Yeah, but that's not so pashut. But I mean, it's definitely not pashut. No, the bottom line is if you have a microwave that's public, right? So it's very nice that there's a sign on it for kosher use. When a non-Jew comes and he wants to warm up his bacon and the other microwave is being used, there's no reason at all why he shouldn't use the other microwave. It's not like he's going to lose his job if he uses the other microwave. So it's tricky. Now there are heterim. People have this problem also when they have non-Jewish cleaning help or babysitters and they leave them alone in the house. There's a big shilas. They're not pasha to shilas. You have to make sure to supply them with everything that you have to supply them with a microwave to heat their thing up and make it just as easy for them to use what you give them, that there's no reason for you to think that they used yours. If there's a reason for them to use yours, your kelim might not be kosher. There's a big shilas with this, and people don't pay attention to it. They let goyim into their house alone, and they don't pay any attention to this at all. It's a real shilah. They have to kasher their kelim. If you put a pot cover, if you put a lid on the pot that you slide into this compartment, then even lechatchila you don't need to smear plaster on the roof, on the underside of the roof of the compartment. Yeah, you chose to join us, by the way, on where we're smack in the middle of Yeridea in the middle of our Chaim. This is not easy stuff here. Now, how about the interior of the oven itself? Forget the compartments, forget the surface, the interior of the oven. If you didn't kasher the interior of the oven, and now you stuck matzah or another Pesach tikka food in the interior of the oven, it would have the same din as if you put it on the surface of the tanner. The chanal, okay, yeah, you took out a matzah and you stuck it into this oven that's not Pesach tik, so all right. If it's hot, it's going to be baleya. If it's cold, if everything is cold, it's not going to be baleya. You can do it b'derech harai, you can't do it b'derech kla. As far as actually baking matzahs, if you tried to bake matzah in an oven that you didn't kasher, that we'll deal with in Tav Samach Aleph when we speak about baking matzahs. As far as taking a pot and putting a pot in the oven, to cook in a pot, a Dutch oven. Even though lechatchila, you definitely have to kasher the oven before you do this, or at least you have to smear plaster, a finger's breadth of plaster on the floor of the oven. We're not going to aser what was in the pot if you didn't kasher it, because the thinking over here is, what's going to be the problem? If the problem is that the oven is balua from tam chametz, so we already said, when a keli has chametz tikka blias in it, and now another keli touches it, let's even say that it is roitiv. Let's even say that it is wet. How deeply are the blias going to penetrate the pot? Kidei klipa. Kidei klipa, the pot is more than kidei klipa. So it's not going to penetrate the ass of the food that's inside the pot. So b'diavad would be able to be made. Okay, it was a real mouthful. Okay. Now we go on to Sif Chav Gimel. And this is something that people have asked about, something that we've discussed already a few times. Kli cheres. You have an earthenware keli. Hamitzupin behitoch zechuches. That is coated or glazed with some kind of glazing of glass. Dinam ki kli cheres. It has a din of kli cheres. It doesn't have a din of a glass keli. It has a din of a kli cheres. Hagaz, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Hagaz, the Ramah says, V'yesh b'kaimai shenagu shalayla hishtamish b'kli cheres glazed, that they don't use glazed kli cheres, afilu chadashim, even if they're brand new. And the Mishnah Berurah will say that the reason they stayed away from using brand new glazed kalim is because it was somewhat common for them to use subin, to mix bran into the glaze. I don't know if that was somehow a thickening agent for the glaze or something, but apparently they put bran into the glaze, so here you can have a real chametz sticker problem. So there was some places where they would noyeg not to use even brand new glazed earthenware kalim on Pesach. Ve'ein lahachmir rak b'mkaim aminug, and the Ramah says that there's no reason to follow this chumrah unless you are in a locale where they did have this minig. Says the Mishnah Berurah, we have these earthenware kalim that are glazed. Mikol tzad, it means that they were glazed on every side. Even though we're going to see shortly when the Mechaber is going to spell out that glass kalim are not boileya, right? Something that we've discussed already a few times. Glass is not boileya. Hacha, over here where we're talking about a kli cheres that has a glazing of glass, kevan de mechupa ala cheres, since the glaze is painted onto the earthenware, v'nitzraf imoy bakivshan, and the glass is fired together with the cheres in a kiln, bolat tvei. Somehow that seems to change the nature of the glass, and don't ask me to explain this because I can't. I don't know exactly what this means. I'm just translating the words of the Chavetz Chaim, and he's not saying it on his own either. The Chavetz Chaim pulled this from a rush, that somehow by attaching the glass to the earthenware, firing it together in a keli, in a kiln, somehow the glass takes on the properties of the kli cheres, and now we say that it could be boileya. I don't know why that should be the case. Maybe it has something to do, I'm just sheer conjecture. Maybe it has something to do with the thickness of the glaze. Maybe glass itself is not boileya, but if it's just a thin glazing, so maybe something does penetrate it and go into the cheres. Don't know. I'm really not sure. But that's what he says over here. He says that's the reasoning for it.
Exactly, say it's pretty clear that China is not that. Everybody else asking that. China,
right, it would seem that glazed China, yeah. Kof lamed ches behitoch schuches, a melted glazing of glass. Fa'askamas akrayim lahachmer af behitoch eferes oy bedil deloy mahani hagola. He says over here that the Achrayim seem all to be maskim. He brings this down, the Bach, the Prichodesh, Yaakov, and others, that the Achrayim are maskim, that we should be machmir, even if we have a coating on an earthenware keli that's made out of lead or out of tin. So you have a metallic surface placed on this earthenware keli. The loy mahani hagola. You still cannot kasher this keli with hagola. You might look at it, you might say, hey, the surface of the keli is metal. Metal, I can always kasher with hagola, so why can't I kasher this with hagola? Yet the Achrayim say no. The reasoning for this is, we know that when we say that a keli is boileya, we say that the blias penetrate the entire thickness of the wall of the keli. That's why I always say, when you have to measure, if you have to measure shishim, right, keneged the blias of the keli, you have to measure keneged the entire volume of the keli, because the blias penetrate the entirety of the keli. So, okay, over here you have an earthenware keli that's surfaced with metal. Metal is boileya. Once the metal is boileya, the underlying cheres is also going to be boileya, because the blias are going to penetrate all the way through. Now the blias go into the cheres, so the earthenware underneath the lead is also boileya. And now once it gets into the cheres, you can't get it out of the cheres, because we said the only way to get blias out of kli cheres is to put it into a kiln. So now you can't get it out. You can't get it out. You can't get it out. So that's it. You're stuck. So a machmer, even on earthenware kalim that are resurfaced with metals. Now the Mechaber said over here that what's the din of this glass glazed earthenware? Dinam ki kli cheres. It has the din of a regular kli cheres. What does that mean? Ritzainer loymar, what the Mechaber means to say over here is, va'az, since we treat it as a regular kli cheres, im tashmisha bechamin, if you use this glazed keli with hot, loymahani hagala. Hagala is not effective, because we said, hagala can't take the blias out of a kli cheres. Ve'ein chiluk beinim haya hakli mikarka yeruka elavana ushchayra. And it doesn't matter what kind of earthenware you're using over here, and he names over here 3 different types. Yeruka, a greenish one, made out of greenish clay, a lavana or white clay, or shchara or black clay. I don't know the subtle differences between types of clay. Even if the earthenware is smooth, without cracks, if you use it with hot, it's going to be baleya. Aval, im derech tashmisha b'tzainain. Let's say you have this glazed earthenware keli that you use with cold. Now, I believe when the Chavetz Chaim says over here that we're talking about a keli that you use with cold, he doesn't mean a plate that we only use with cold food, because a plate that we only use with regular cold food for 5 minutes at a time, obviously there's no blias. That we already said earlier. We said in Sif Chav Beis, if you use an earthenware keli only with cold, and the Mishnah Berurah said, what do I mean only with cold? It's a davar yavesh, and it's cold, or it's a davar lach, it's a liquid, and it's cold, but you didn't have it there for 24 hours, so then obviously there's no blias, and you could use it. The Mishnah Berurah over here seems to be talking about a glazed earthenware keli that you use with cold, but it had the opportunity to cause a blia problem because of kavush. So let's say you used it with cold chametz, a davar lach. Let's say you had some kind of a preparation over there with breadcrumbs in it and liquid, and you put it in there for 24 hours. So now you have the blia of kavush. Yet, says the Mishnah Berurah, avalim derech tashmisha b'tzainain, if we have a keli, you pull the door closed. If you have a keli that you use with cold, oz yesh chilik. Then there's a difference depending on what kind of clay it was made out of. If it's made out of this greenish earthenware, that is no way to kasher it, because those kalim are baleya. But if it's made out of this white or this black earthenware, then you can kasher it. Why? Because then we're talking about a kli cheres that was baleya shaloy al yidei ha'ur. It was not baleya through heat. It was only baleya through cold. And that we said earlier in Sif Chaf Aleph, that when you have an earthenware keli that's balua from kavush, but from cold, so it was not baleya al yidei chamin, it was not baleya through heat, you could kasher it with hagala. Afilu im yesh ba b'koyim, and since it's glazed, you could do this even if it has fissures. And if it has no fissures, ein tzarech hagala, doesn't need hagala at all. If it was only baleya, if the only opportunity it had to be baleya was through kavush, and it was cold. It would be enough just to clean it off, to scrub it well. The chamavur b'yaredea siman kuf lamed hey le'inyan yayin nesach, and we're going to have to stop over here. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure.